Greetings, students. Today, we'll be discussing the economic impacts of Pakistan's colonialism over East Pakistan. As you all know, we started discussing the Pakistan period from the last lecture. Now, the interesting thing that you'll have to keep in mind is that in 1947, the overwhelming majority of the people of East Pakistan, what constitutes Bangladesh now, voted for the Muslim League and voted for a Pakistan. And they all had big dreams on what Pakistan would provide for them. However, in a matter of a few months, that changed. And over the next 24 years, people started recognizing how Pakistan, the state of Pakistan, was actually exploiting East Pakistan and treating it as a colony. In the last lecture, we talked about the cultural aspects of it, Pakistan's oppression over our language, our culture, denial of our language, in fact. Today, we'll be talking about the economic exploitation, and in the next class, we'll be talking about the political domination. So once again, today, we'll be discussing the economic exploitation of East Pakistan. So today's lecture is on the increasing economic exploitation in Pakistan and how that we can see through the increasing regional disparity. There's another thing you have to recognize is that Pakistan was pursuing a capitalist development model. Because at that time, there was the Cold War and a large influence of the Soviet Union and China over many parts of the world, especially Southeast Asia. Remember the Vietnam War was going on at that time? So Pakistan was picked up as a model for the rest of the world on what capitalist development would look like. So it was American advisors coming from Harvard who advised the Pakistan government in promoting a strong capitalist development path, which in turn actually led to increasing regional disparity and the economic exploitation of East Pakistan. So in this class, as I said, we'll be talking about the economic disparity. We'll be identifying some of the causes of that. And we will try to understand how that pursuing of the capitalist development model actually led to the inequality between East and West Pakistan. We'll also try to understand how the 6-point program of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Awami League tried to redress the imbalance, the 6-point that the Pakistan state never accepted. And in fact, when it was obvious that we would take over government and implement the 6 points, they launched this massive genocide. So let's briefly start with what the initial conditions were. West Pakistan, at the time of the partition, 1947, did have slightly better roads, railways, irrigation, and power. But while East Pakistan didn't have that, East Pakistan had highly fertile land, good rainfall for agricultural production, and well-developed systems of waterways for transportation. Both wings had very low industrial capacity. Just remember, in the East, it was mainly in Calcutta and West Bengal, and also in West Pakistan, there wasn't much. It was primarily in India. Educational attainment was also low. But very importantly, West Pakistan had a strong army because much of the British army, the British Indian army, comprised of people from the Northwest Frontier Province and from West Punjab, which constituted Pakistan. Also, in terms of the Indian civil bureaucracy, when the Muslims migrated to Pakistan in 1947, they generally all migrated to West Pakistan. So the civil bureaucracy was dominated by West Pakistanis. Also, in terms of businesses, most Muslim traders from India went to West Pakistan. And very few, the Isfahanis, for example, came to East Pakistan. So, once again, the economic conditions of East Pakistan in 1947. What did you have here? As we said, East Pakistan was the hinterland. Kolkata was the center of education, of professional people, and also of government. Hindu zamindars dominated the land in East Pakistan, and Muslims were generally tenants and smallholder farmers. So when the Hindu zamindars left in 1947 and land was taken over by the government, you had a system of Muslim tenants and smallholder farmers. Trade, commerce, financial intermediation, and even rural industries were primarily dominated by Hindus. The tea industry in East Pakistan and the mechanized river transport were generally owned by the British. We also already said bureaucracy, teaching, legal professions in East Pakistan or East Bengal dominated by the Hindus. So the reason why Muslims voted for Pakistan in the East in 1947 because the Bengali Muslims expected they would make great advancements through the creation of Pakistan. But let's see what happened. Let's look at the growth of disparity. So we're looking at per capita incomes. Already from the beginning, 4950, you have, just look at the last column that's highlighted in yellow, 22% of West Pakistanis earned 22% more incomes than East Pakistanis by the early years of independence of Pakistan. But that started increasing over the years. Instead of going down and having greater equality, it started increasing to 24%, to 32%, to 45%, and by 69, 70, West Pakistani households earned 61% more incomes than East Pakistanis. So the state of Pakistan and the 24 years of Pakistani rule had led to East Pakistanis earning less and less than West Pakistanis. And that follows too, not just in incomes, but in consumption. So let's just look at the highlighted ones. Let's look at milk and butter. In East Pakistan, this is pounds per month, East Pakistani people would consume 2.1 pounds per month of milk and butter. West Pakistanis 8.6. Mutton, beef, and fish, East Pakistanis would consume 0.4 pounds per month. West Pakistanis would consume 1.7 pounds per month, implying huge differences in some of the consumption patterns. In fact, the prices too varied. The same price of rice, the same rice cost 518 rupees per ton in East Pakistan, but only 334 rupees in West Pakistan. Wheat, 517 rupees per ton in East Pakistan, and 267 only, nearly half in West Pakistan. So not only were the West Pakistanis earning more over the years, but they were also purchasing commodities at far cheaper prices than in East Pakistan. Even when things used to be grown in East Pakistan, it would be made available in West Pakistan at a cheaper rate. That was one form of exploitation. Also, other things, look at motor vehicles. 56,000 motor vehicles in East Pakistan, 259,000 in West Pakistan. Hospital beds, about 7,000 in East Pakistan in 1966, 26,000 hospital beds in West Pakistan, 88,000 doctors in East Pakistan, and 131,000 doctors in West Pakistan. Gives you an idea of the disparity. Let's also look at the regional expenditures. This is revenue and development expenditures, what the government was spending. And look at the differences. In East Pakistan, over this period, there was 35 billion, this is in million takas, 35 billion takas spent in East Pakistan, but 82 billion takas spent in West Pakistan. So the government was spending only 33% of its money in East Pakistan and 67% in West Pakistan. Also, when foreign aid was coming in, we notice a huge, big difference. Let's just look at the bottom row in terms of percentages. So all the foreign aid that came in the name of Pakistan, East Pakistan received only 31% of foreign aid. West Pakistan received 69% of foreign aid. I'm rounding it up, obviously. So you get a sense, again, of the disparity increasing over the years. The balance of payments, this is exports versus imports. And so the net disparity is being met by the government. So East Pakistan imported 4 billion rupees more than it exported. West Pakistan imported 55 billion rupees more than it exported. So big balance of payments for West Pakistan, which the government had to meet, pay up. So in East Pakistan, we were exporting quite a bit, even though, like in the early years, 48 to 60 to 61, we were exporting more than we were importing, and the net money was getting transferred to West Pakistan. Finally, if we look at the transfer of resources, how much net resources was being transferred to West Pakistan from East Pakistan. So from 1948-49 to 68-69, a total of, it was much higher in the early years, slightly lower in the a few later years. But if you look at the last row, last column, we see that over the years, from 48 to 69, almost 12 billion rupees was transferred from East Pakistan to West Pakistan. And East Pakistanis realized it. And they were very angry because they realized that the Pakistani government was paying partial to West Pakistan, and money from East Pakistan was being transferred to West Pakistan. Now that was the East-West thing, but even in East Pakistan, it was the non-Bengalis rather than Bengalis that were dominating the economy. So even when you see that East Pakistan produced so much or earned so much money, it wasn't Bengalis that were receiving it. To a great extent, it was non-Bengalis. So non-Bengalis received 62% of all money that the government was providing to set up industries in East Pakistan. So it was coming in the name of East Pakistan to set up industrial enterprises. But almost 2/3 of it, it was non-Bengalis receiving it. The government was also setting up major factories and just transferring it to West Pakistan, non-Bengalis in East Pakistan. So it would show that the government is providing these factories to East Pakistan, but in reality, it wasn't Bengalis. In fact, in terms of all the industrial assets in East Pakistan, 47% was owned by non-Bengalis and only 23% by Bengalis. So you see that even in East Pakistan, whatever there was, it was non-Bengali controlled. They controlled 93% of all imports and most wholesale trade. And they owned the banks. So 70% of all bank deposits in East Pakistan were in non-Bengali banks. And they owned two of the largest 3 shipping companies and 19% of all tea outputs. So once again, it was whatever there was in East Pakistan. It was little compared to West Pakistan, but that too was owned by non-Bengalis. A principal mechanism of resource transfer from East Pakistan to West Pakistan was through overvaluating the rupee. Now what that means is, and I'll give you an example, supposing the international exchange rate for $1 was actually 10 rupees. The Pakistan government overvalued the value of the rupee from 10 rupee to 5 rupee per dollar. Now what would that mean? It would mean that when West Pakistani industrialists were buying capital goods, machinery from the West using dollars, instead of paying $10 for each, 10 rupee for each dollar, they were only paying 5 rupee for every dollar worth of things they were procuring. So supposing they were buying a refrigerator or an air conditioning, and if it cost $100, they should have actually paid 1,000 rupees. Instead of that, they were only paying 500 rupees. So West Pakistani spent much less on imported goods, the capital goods that were imported. On the other hand, jute growers in East Pakistan who were exporting jute were receiving, instead of 10 rupees for every dollar that they were exporting abroad, they were receiving 5 rupees because the Pakistan government had overvalued the rupee. So for every dollar, people were getting less rupee. So once again, the East Pakistani jute growers were getting half as much for the actual value of the dollar, and West Pakistanis were getting twice as much for the value of the dollar they were importing. This is how resources were transferred from East Pakistan to West Pakistan. State promotion of West Pakistani industries, that was promoted by the people in state in national government, low interest loans, over invoicing for initial capital. We will be discussing that in more details in the discussion groups. Now, while this started from the late 50s onwards, young Bengali economists realized what was going on, started protesting. Remember, the Pakistan government was being aided by the top economists of the world from Harvard University and others promoting the capitalist development. And here you have young economists in East Pakistan in their 20s, early, mid-20s, and maybe 1 or 2 in their early 30s, by the end of 60s. But they were all young. And they said, no, your policies are discriminatory. Your policies are promoting increasing disparity. And I just wanted to mention some of these famous professors who took issue with the Pakistan government and with Harvard professors. They were Professor Akhlaqur Rahman, Professor Ibn Islam, Professor Rehman Subhan, Professor Musharraf Hussain, and Professor Anisur Rahman. We owe a great debt to them, an intellectual debt, for pointing out how we were being exploited. As I said, the Harvard Advisory Group was contributing to the development plans in Pakistan. And in 1968, because Ayub Khan had finished 10 years of his dictatorship, his rule, Ayub Khan and the US economists were celebrating the decade of development, they called it, 1958 to 68. And they said, this is excellent. We are having high growth. And Pakistan has proven once again how we can have a capitalist development model that is a response to what the socialists are saying. However, what we found out that what it did was promote regional inequality, and we went through that. It also promoted income inequality. Workers' wages kept going down and down, not just in East Pakistan, but in West Pakistan also. The peasantry in our part of the world got poorer and poorer. And you had the rise of 22 rich families. These were big business houses, the Adamjis, the Bawanis, and others. You had only one family from East Pakistan that were part of the 22 families. That was the A.K. Khan family, the A.K. Khan group that is still active in business today. West Pakistan had the powerful bureaucracy and army. We had very minimal representation in the bureaucracy and the army. What you also had was an affluent urban upper class. Of course, in West Pakistan, but in East Pakistan also. So an affluent urban upper class that benefited from Pakistani rule, Bengalis, who felt that they owed to Pakistan and who supported Pakistan. A very small fraction of the population, but they spoke in Urdu or English. They did not like Bangladeshi, and they contributed to the exploitation of Bengalis and us not having confidence in our own nationality. So there was also this affluent urban upper class. In the discussion group, we can talk more about that too. So because of all this, in 1966, Sheikh Mujib and the Awami League wrote up the 6-point program. This was along with the Bengali economists, and it was Sheikh Mujib himself that participated in creating the 6 points. And the 6-point demand really was for ensuring that East Pakistan would not be exploited. And this was spread all over East Pakistan, all over Bangladesh at that time. And people would refer to it as Choi Dofa, amader bachar dabi. Choi Dofa dabi, Bangalir bachar dabi. So what were the 6 points? Part of it was about democracy, that we should have a parliamentary form of government, not what Ayub Khan was doing through basic democracies and controlling elections. So we wanted democratic elections. We wanted regional autonomy. We wanted East Pakistan to decide how the economy would function in East Pakistan. And we would let West Pakistan do the same, but letting the central government only control defense and foreign affairs. We would control the rest. And so that money could not be taken from East Pakistan to West Pakistan. This flight of capital, the flight of resources could not continue. We wanted 2 currencies or 2 separate central banks. Also for foreign exchange, we wanted 2 separate accounts. Whatever East Pakistan would earn through the export of jute and others, and tea, we would control it. It would not go to Pakistan. Also, we would have a separate military and a separate paramilitary force, along with the naval headquarters here. These were the 6-point programs in 1966, and this was the basis of the elections in 1970, end of 1970, which Awami League won, and people voted for the 6-point program for regional autonomy. This is a famous poster, and I wanted to end with this. It says, Shurar Bangla Shoshan Keno. Why is Golden Bengal now a graveyard? And it points to the economic disparities between East Pakistan and West Pakistan. And this poster was put up everywhere in East Pakistan. I used to be politically active at that time, and I visited a lot of places in East Pakistan at that time, and this was everywhere. And every Bengali had seen this. And basically it said how we were being exploited. So Bangladesh, we were, Rajaswa Khat, revenues, they were spending, Pakistan was spending 1,500 crore takas here. In West Pakistan, they were spending 5,000. Development expenditures, 3,000 crore takas here, 6,000 in West Pakistan, and so on and so forth. But also, look at where at the bottom, look at the price of rice per mond, which is a little less than 40 kilograms. 50 takas per mond in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, and 25 only in West Pakistan. Why this disparity when we produce the majority of rice? Rice is, of course, produced also in Pakistan, but we're producing the majority. Wheat too, big disparity, cheaper in West Pakistan. Mustard oil, half the price in West Pakistan. The price of gold, that too was different in West Pakistan, cheaper than in East Pakistan. So this is what Awami League and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman showed to every Bengal how we were exploited. And this rallied everyone in East Pakistan to vote for Awami League. So let me end here. Once again, what I tried to demonstrate was how East Pakistan was exploited by West Pakistan from the beginning of the creation of Pakistan, and how over the years we started realizing how we were being exploited, and we spoke out. We said, if you want a single unified Pakistan, you have to provide us with autonomy. So we wanted to present you with certain facts about this discrimination. Thank you. Next class, we'll talk about the political elements, the political aspects, the political fight against dictatorship, the political fight for democracy. Thank you very much. Let's talk more in the discussion sessions.